Hello, and welcome back to another Elevation Association Experience podcast. We are your hosts once again, Dr. Jared Hill, Dr. Dan Nelson. Welcome back. Excited about the show today. We're going to talk about something that's, I think, is a hot topic for a lot of offices, and that's conflict resolution and learning how to properly do a employee review. And that sounds simple, except that it's extremely difficult. And I think that people, especially us owners, find ourselves more often than not at a loss at how to put out the fires that occur in the office, especially when it's interpersonal relationships, and figuring out which direction to go when there is conflict or disciplinary action is necessary, or even rewards are warranted. So we're going to jump into that. Jared, you're an old hat at this. You've been doing this for a long time, so I think this should be pretty exciting to talk about the ins and outs and frustrations that come with all of this.
Yeah, it was a source of frustration. I did it wrong for a long time, and there's several different ways you can do this, but this does if you don't understand the how to do this and the implications of doing this, then it causes a lot of frustration, not only within yourself but also within the team members. And working as a team can really drag you down and make dentistry difficult. So it's a great topic. We've got some great information. Looking forward to diving into it today.
Yeah. So the bottom line with this, Jared, is, as we've found, is that it goes back to your core values, right? It really ties into your core values. And one of our core values is accountability. And so that's kind of ironic that one of ours is accountability, because what we're going to discuss has a lot about keeping yourself and your employees accountable to your core values. But if you don't start with your core values, you're not going to have anything to clearly hold your employees accountable to, because the expectations aren't set, right? So, and I think that the very first thing that has to be understood is getting the foundation right. Getting the basics taken care of. And I think that you have a gift with understanding where people belong in the right situation. So I think it'd be good for you just to talk a little bit about right people, right seats principle. Tell us about the accountability chart, how we use it, and how it can help an office out.
Yeah, so it starts, with your core values, like you said before. You really need to define those because everything hinges off of that, which it really does. You hire, you fire, you review, and you reward all based upon your core values. And so as you start to use those core values, and not just state them and forget about them, but state them, review them, uh, reward based upon them on a weekly basis, however you use them, that's when it starts to make a difference within your practice. And that's when you can start to use your accountability chart, because as you sit down with your employee and you say, okay, tell me about how you do with this core value, accountability, or this core value of everybody is important, or whatever your core values are, tell me about how good you're doing. And as you start to get feedback from them, you start to understand if they really understand the core values, and if so, where do they belong then on the accountability chart? As far as are they ready or able to have people underneath them? Meaning, are they able to lead a small team within your practice? Are we ready for a hygiene coordinator or a treatment coordinator position, or what? But their understanding and implementation of the core values of your practice really helps determine where they sit within your practice. And if you don't know that, then you may raise them to a position that they aren't ready for, and that's setting themselves and yourself up for failure, not success. So it really all hinges upon these core values, and it really hinges upon using the core values, reinforcing the core values, talking about them, showing them, emphasizing this is what this means, and really seeing who gets it. It's going to stick with some people. Some people aren't gonna understand it, and that helps you understand that they're not quite ready for advancement within your practice or leadership role, and that helps you evaluate really, a position employees should have within your practice.
And I think that the right people, right seats concept is huge because if you put the wrong person, even if you only have 2 employees, if you put the wrong person in the wrong seat, you're instantly setting them up for conflict because either they're not qualified, they don't give a rip, whatever it is that they are not the right person for that seat. The other person's going to begin to resent that person because they just don't do the job right, right? And that creates frustration, and now you have conflict, which again will eventually lead to resentment, which will corrode the office environment. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is a huge one, right? Just get the foundation right. You kind of touched on the people analyzer tool. You said that they gotta get it. Um, and that's one of the principles that we learn about in traction, that we promote a lot, is this idea of, do the people get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it? Right. So how do you analyze? Is that the right person for that seat? Well, that's how you figure it out. They have to get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it. And again, if they don't have those three things, then that's not the right person for that seat, and you're going to have instant conflict. You're going to be fighting an uphill battle. You're going to be like, how come this isn't getting done? Whatever. It's going to be a trudge.
Yeah, when talking about getting it, uh, sitting down with a review with them on a semi-annual or annual basis, right? So you say, okay, what are our core values? That's essentially what's driving your practice. And then how are you doing with your quarterly goals, the personal quarterly goals? How are we doing as a team? And if they don't know what they're doing, if they don't know where they're at with their own personal quarterly goals that you've helped them set, or they don't understand all the core values, then they don't get it. And that's an important concept. They may want it. We have had that, people who want a position, but they don't get it. Like, they don't understand what it means to have that position within our own practice. So it really is. You may be desperate. I think a lot of dentists are desperate to put somebody in a position or promote them to a position, because they've done a good job, or they may have been a hard worker, whatever it is.
Or they're
But
a relative.
or their relative, yeah, even worse. Um, But
Or
if you really need to sit down and see, first of all, do they get it? And then if they get it, yes, do they want it? Some people don't want it. Some people don't want to promote it. Some people really like where they're at. And then do they have the capacity to do it? Meaning, they really have the time and the means and the skill set to be able to do that? And that's important that they have all three of those things in order to move on to move up to the next level of where they're at in your practice on your accountability chart.
yeah, totally. And I think, that and this needs to be emphasized at this point in this discussion, is that clarity prevents conflict. And so clear expectations are going to prevent a lot of the conflict. If you don't clearly define the expectations via your core values, via your accountability chart, via your roles and responsibilities, you're going to have a rough go of trying to resolve conflict. You're going to actually breed conflict. And so clarity prevents conflict. So I think that's got to be a huge component of this discussion. And along those lines, we're not escaping this without me talking about some psychology. We gotta have a little psychology discussion here. And I want to get into a little bit, just touch on the neuroscience of defensiveness, and what happens when people slide into, it's I was laughing yesterday. I was talking to Lindsay about how when we have to discipline somebody, human nature, nobody freaking likes being disciplined. Nobody likes to be disciplined, especially as adults. Adults disciplining other adults is not fun, and it's not fun for the person. Well, for most people, they don't enjoy doing the disciplining, and we certainly don't like to be disciplined, right? And so there has to be a little bit of a shift of thought when we going into this, and be careful, because depending on the way you approach things, if you approach another adult like the way you do your kids, that's not gonna go over well, right? Like, that's not an appropriate way to have a disciplinary discussion, or a course correction discussion with another adult. And what happens with the brain is that we go into a fight or flight mode. It's very normal when you start to have conflict. That's what the brain does when it has conflict. Is it goes into a fight or flight, and so you can, and depending on the person, right? We've all seen it. Either they will do battle with you and they're going to engage, or they just shut down, right? And so if you come in with the intent of disciplining instead of problem solving, you're going to immediately create conflict and you're going to put that person into a fight or flight mode. And that becomes extremely difficult on either one of those modes to get conflict or to get any type of resolution because it's survival mode. Now the brain is in survival mode. It's not in, oh, I want to problem solve this stuff. And so that's a really important concept to remember as I'm approaching this person. Am I going into discipline or is my intent to resolve the problem? And do I have the problem? I love that quote. What is it, Jared? A problem well defined is a problem half solved. I really like that quote. So psychological safety, we'll call it, is a precondition for honest feedback. Okay. So Amy Edmondson did work in this field of understanding what psychological safety is. And I am not one of these. I'm not big on the everyone gets a trophy. I'm not big on the whole huggy, lovey, everything's, we have to do things with, hugs and rainbows and, unicorns. I'm not that guy. I just don't think that's the approach. I think that a direct, honest, respectful approach goes a lot further than trying to sugarcoat or play down or be overly soft to a situation. But I think that we do have to create an environment of psychological safety, right?
Yeah, you've reviewed um with us the 5 rules to go along with this. There's some steps of how we do this. I think one of the issues before we dive into those steps that was difficult for me as a young practice owner was to address the issue. I think it's easy to get buried in the work and the quote unquote busyness of what you're doing, and you would avoid conflict, hoping it would just go away, right? I mean,
Mm,
how often you're like, well, maybe it'll just go away, and how often does it go away? It never does. It only gets worse, right? And what that does, if you avoid the conflict, that is poisoning the morale of the office.
yeah.
It's showing that you are not leading, you're not addressing issues, and all of a sudden mutiny starts, and now you have an even bigger issue to address. So it really is. This is one of the difficult parts of leadership because there are things that come up that aren't things. There are
Yeah.
issues that come up that aren't issues. There are personal conflicts and personal nagging parts of life, the office of working in a tight environment close to people, of relationship issues that you know and there is a what we found. One of the struggles that we've had is some people want to bring that up in a public environment, like the issues list in our meeting,
Yeah. Cause they're
and
afraid of one-on-one conflict, right?
it's a one-on-one conflict, and they often want to garner support from other people, and so
Yeah.
uh they will talk in backdoor channels and discuss this opinion if it's not addressed by the leader of the practice, which is you. So, and I guess I'm kind of diving into these 5 rules of conflict is to address the issue early and privately if it is a private issue like that, like you're talking about, like this psychological safety to not, because if this gets brought up in a group, and this person's blindsided by it, then they are going to absolutely go into the fight or flight method, and it's going to be bad. It's not going to get resolved. Resentment's going to set in. Feelings are going to get hurt, and it's not going to get resolved.
Totally. Yeah, and I think it's important that if you are a person that you have to know enough about yourself and say, okay, do I, again, people don't like most people don't like conflict. Um, and they try to avoid it. And again, it depends how you approach it. Do you look at it as conflict, or do you look at it as problem solving? Right. And so and there are some employees that you're going to have that problem solving turns into conflict. Right. And so it's like, oh, I just don't want to have that, because they're gonna argue with me, or they're gonna mope and pout, or they're gonna storm off, or whatever. And people don't like to have that interaction. So like, okay, yeah, like you said, so I'm gonna garnish it. I'm gonna go recruit a team around me now to bring this to a public space, and we're gonna try to hash it out where I can do it with support. And that is not the way to do it, right? Like that's super, super dangerous, and will definitely create some resentment. Again, talking about that. But on the flip side, I like that you brought up the conflict avoidance cycle, and because that is definitely something that we see a lot. That if you don't resolve the issue, somebody else will, and the way that they go about resolving it may be unhealthy to the environment that you're in, so your office or whatever. So yeah, I think that's awesome stuff. Like you said, Jared, I do want to talk about the 5 rules of conflict resolution. Um, and number 1 is address the issue early and privately. So again, this doesn't need to be some big, long, drawn out thing. Typically, if you're direct with these things, you can make it short and easy. And that brings us to number 2, which is use I statement instead of you accusation. So the reason I say it brings us to that is that there's a lot of times where you go into these situations, and they become much bigger because now you are making you accusation. You didn't do this. You're not doing that. You did this. You had that, you failed on this front, whatever. And if you go into it saying, I noticed that this thing didn't get done. I noticed that you seem to be a little distracted, or I'm worried about what's happening with this result. I'm worried that we're not going to hit our goal. I'm worried about our core values not being held up. Whatever it is, if you go in using I statements instead of you accusations, that's going to be a lot healthier, and it's going to keep that conversation to a much shorter discussion. Number 3 is focus on behavior, not character. This is one that we talk about with our employees quite a bit, because as soon as you go in and attack the person's integrity or their character, now you're starting to erode that relationship. So if you focus more on the behavior or the impact of the behavior, I think that's a big thing to discuss, is that, um, this didn't get done and therefore we didn't reach our goal, or this didn't get done, therefore it clogged up the works in the patient flow today, or whatever it is. Focus on the behavior or the impact of the behavior or the result of the behavior much more than the person's character. Do not attack the person's character. You might be frustrated and think they're an idiot, but you can't go after their character. Number 4 is listen to understand before responding. This was a huge one. I actually met with a personal counselor a few years back, who I was I was learning some stuff about parenting. And this was one of the things that he was huge on, was listen to understand. Um, don't listen to debate, don't listen to correct, listen to get their perspective. And you're trying to gain their perspective. And maybe they have a really good reason that things are happening the way they are. I think back, Jared, when I first started here, we had an assistant that was off her game for sure. She was struggling. And it was like, I'd just gotten here, so I didn't really know the ins and outs of the office. But it was pretty obvious to me that, like, she wasn't performing at a level that, you'd expect. And so, like, I don't know, like a month and a half after I was here, it came out that her husband had cheated on her, and she was going through an ugly divorce, and she was having to work through all this stuff. And every day the attorney was calling her, and she was getting phone calls from the guy that cheated on her. And it was just a lot of distraction and frustration. So to just go in and be like, you're not doing this right, and not listening to understand, you could really put your foot in your mouth. And you can you can heap on some weight on someone that's already carrying a lot of weight. And then the 5th one is end with agreed action and accountability. And this one's a huge one. Okay, what are we going to do to move forward and solve this problem? and what's the actions that are going to be taken, and then do we come back and review it? How are we going to account for it? Do we what's the plan of action next, right? So those are the five rules of conflict resolution. They are, I think, pretty simple, not always easy to follow, right? So, but I think that understanding what they are and utilizing them, uh, I mean, even write them down. That sentence seems childish and kind of silly, but when you go in for either your employee reviews or maybe you need to have some course correction, write these down and take them with you and be like, hey, I just want to do this right. I just want to do this right, and I want to be respectful to you. And so, yeah, just don't mind my notes here. But I think that there's a easy way to do it and a hard way to do it, and this is a much easier way to do it.
Yeah, the going through each one of these, I can think of examples where each one of them was difficult. Address it early, privately. That's sometimes it's hard to do when you're or the earlier the better. Meaning, what does early mean? Is it like that day? Is it that week? Is it that what does early mean to you? And then privately, sometimes it's hard to say, and I think the best way to do this is, "Hey, can you stay for a few minutes after work today? We need to talk about a couple things." That's a difficult thing to say because they're gonna think about that all day long, and it's gonna be kind of a big, but it's important that you you set aside that time and let them know that you're thinking about something and wanna address it. The first thing they're gonna say is, "Am I getting fired?" That's been my response. It's been several responses to me when I've said this, "Hey, can we talk for a few minutes after?"
Hey, am I getting fired?
The first time I said that, "Hey, can we talk for a few minutes after work?" She said, "Just fire me now." And I said, she said, "I wanna work all day if I'm gonna get fired today." And I'm like, "You're not okay." What do you say to that? That's hard, but that's a statement that you need to talk about, and, and then using the I or the we instead of the you sort of thing. It's, that's difficult as well because you're talking to them about their behavior or something that they've done or said that goes against core values. So it's avoiding that. You haven't done this or you haven't done that, or but at some point in time they need to understand that it's that it's them, right? So that's a difficult aspect as well. Just as long as you're focusing on behavior, not character, I think is the big thing. Once you attack somebody's character, then that's a hard thing to come back from, right?
I'm
And so,
I'm glad, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because when I studied relationship therapy, one of the big things, the predictors of success on so relationship therapy generally sucks. And it's not the fault of the therapist; it's generally the fault of the people going to seek therapy. And the reason being is that they don't want to take accountability for the actions, right? And so until you get a couple that wants to own their part of the conflict and the problem, you won't get resolution. You just don't. And so the objective of any good counselor is not so much to resolve the conflict off the bat, but to get each each of the one of the couples to recognize their hand and what they're doing to contribute to the problem. And so I think that you brought that up is really important because I think I wasn't very clear on that, and I think that you've made it a lot more clear, and that it's that your objective should be to get them to own their behavior or the whatever they're doing that causes the problem. So, or not doing that causes the problem. And if they don't have ownership of that, if they never catch on, then you're never going to get the resolution. And you probably need to look at either a deeper disciplinary action or letting them go. Because if you have someone that won't own their problem, you're never going to get through it. And that's why the divorce rate is over 50% in the US, is that people don't own, and this is a huge issue. Like I mean, I don't know that I can express how severe this is. And it's that the desire of to be right, and self-preservation. I talk about self-preservation a lot. This idea of self-preservation is massive. and we have this idea of who we are and the schema of how we fit in the world. And when that gets disrupted, we go again into that fight or flight because of self-preservation, and some people will not own their problems, and it's extremely difficult to work through them if you can't get that done. Now, that's why there's the focus on behavior, is it's that you're never going to change the person, but you can change the behavior, right? So that's I'm really glad you said that, Jared.
Yeah. And then when you end it, this is a critical portion as well. You said end with agreed action and accountability. And you need to write it down, because what you understood as an agreed action and accountability may not be what they understood as the agreed action and
Mm,
accountability.
mhm.
Um, because in your mind, it might have been very clear, and in their mind, something else might have been very clear. And so you need to write it down, and you need to have them read it afterwards and sign it. Both you need to sign it, because when you say that, I've had this happen before as well. I've written it up and they're like, "This isn't what we agreed upon." I was like, "Well, this in my mind, this is what we agreed upon. How is this not?" I'm not sure, the words that must have come out of my mouth must have been different than the ones you heard. So it's important to make sure that you both understand clearly what the accountability is. And that feels very formal. It feels very HR-ish, and it's really not for me. It's not a fun portion of it, and it's difficult, but it's important. And that's how I approach it. If I have to do it now, is like, look, I'm writing this down to make sure that we both are on the same page. These are the bullet points that we talked about. And instead of saying these are the changes that I need you to make, sign this, I'd say, does this look right to you? Does this look like what we talked about or discussed? And if they say, yeah, it is, then they can sign it. We sign it, we move on, and for the file. And they understand that as employees, that is the dark side of owning a business, and it's just a part of doing it. But if they don't agree to that, that's grounds for dismissal, and that's not somebody who is actively trying to work through stuff. But you may have also misstated, and you may be after you read that and go through that, if they don't agree with it, then you need to back up. Okay, let's back up and let's review this to make sure that we're both on the same page. So
Yeah, that's a great point. And you made me think too, Jared, about something you said earlier, and that not every issue is an issue, and so having to weed through as a leader, that's one of the things that you do as a leader is you don't want to pick every battle and fight every battle, right? So you have to decide, is this really an issue? Is it not? And I think that I think issues in an office fall into two camps. And, we're huge on promoting IDS, identify, discuss, and solve issues. So and you should have an issue list that you work through. And so I think that there's two types of issues. Well, there's probably a bunch, but I'm just thinking about the two that you have within an office that when you're using, IDS, and it's the ones that are usually something to do that are professionally related, right? Like, it's maybe a goal related issue, or there's a problem with ordering, or it's a systemic, a system or a protocol or process issue. We got to rewrite that. Um, it's something along those lines. And then there's your interpersonal relationship issues. And those are not ones, those manifest with poor performance on the professional side, and you can definitely put those issues on the IDS, but nobody will put like, oh, Dr. Nelson's being a jerk, or he's on edge and he's snapping at everybody, or that's not going up. No one in there is, as we said about talking about private versus, putting on public, nobody wants to put that on a big issues list that we talk about in front of the whole team, right? So or if maybe someone's having conflict, maybe two of the assistants are having conflict. Let me give you a real world example. Is right now we have an assistant who, for whatever reason, is not following protocol, and we've defined protocol in the office. We have it very clearly written out. We hand it out when we change any protocol. We print it off and give one to everybody, and we review it. And this way, if there's ever any question, we can go back and look at the protocols and processes and say, okay, this is what you do. Well, she's not following them. And it's been going on for a couple weeks now. and especially hit its kind of peak while Jared and I were in Africa this last couple weeks, and uh, it is starting to erode the relationships with the other assistants because they're feeling like they're having to pick up the slack and redo things that she's not doing, and it's affecting their daily workflow. And so I had one of the other assistants come and talk to me yesterday and said, what do you think we should do? You said if we have one of these issues to come and talk to you. And this was an interesting thing where now this has gotten to a point where they're at a boiling point. They're frustrated. They're beginning to resent her. And I said, I always ask the same question. Have you talked to them? That's always the first question I ask them. Have you talked to them? And the answer, Jared, you can attest to this, is always no. They never talk to each other. S-
But have you talked to the other assistants and then wound everyone else up? Yes, you have. Have you
yes.
gotten a camp behind you to gossip about this person? Yes, you have. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So this goes back to that idea of like resolving it earlier. And one of the things that they promote in the military, and one of the things I really liked as a leadership principle, was that you address problems at the lowest level possible. And so if you're not careful, um, you're going to be putting out every little fire and problem and gripe and complain in your office if you don't promote those interpersonal relationship issues being resolved on a one-on-one level or a whatever at the lowest level possible within your office. If we've talked about this on other podcasts, if you allow an employee to come to you and say, go put out this fire for me, I need you to go and fight my battle. If you allow that, they will come to you every time and expect you to go put that fire out every time because now they don't have to. They don't have to put themselves in that uncomfortable position. It's their gripe, but you're the one that's going to go and fight their fight for them. So you're basically now a hired assassin where you're like, oh, yeah, I don't want to go do this thing. You got to go do it for me. And if you continue to promote that, the more you do it, the less they will ever resolve their own conflict. They'll always bring it to you because why not? So that's a huge thing to watch out for. Um, at the same time, if you don't address some of the stuff and you leave it unresolved, those small problems will work their way up like they did to me yesterday. And so the strategy here is always hit it back to them. Okay, well, what are you going to do? Hey, Dr. Nelson, what are we going to do? She's not doing these things. Okay, what are you going to do about it? Well, clearly what you're going to do is try to get me to fix it. I'm not going to fix it. So what are you going to do about it? And I'm not saying don't offer suggestion and help and input, but don't go and be like, oh yeah, I'll pull her aside and we'll fix this right away tomorrow. Don't do that. I've made that mistake too many times. Don't do that. Bounce it back to them. And Jared is awesome at this. He always asks two questions, right? One of the first things is he says, did you put it on the issues list? Like that's always number one thing, right? Did you put it on the issue? Well, we can't put this on the issues list. Well, did you talk to him? So those are the two things that I love. It's like, okay, those are the basics. Let's handle the basics, right? So anyway, well, I wish I could get everybody an update, but I bounced this back to the assistants to talk to this other assistant about resolving some of this problem. And there may come a point where now it's like, all right, we've talked to her, it's not getting solved. Now it's come up to be a bigger issue where it's affecting the entire practice. And now the leadership has to get involved. But start at the lowest level possible.
Yeah, honestly, and what I've found over the years is that some people just like drama. They really do, and they say they don't, and they're the first ones to tell you, I don't like drama. I don't like drama." But some people like it, and they like to stir stuff up, and they like to get these emotions rolling high, and they live off of they get a high off of it almost. And so, but when it comes down to it, and you can de-escalate this before you even approach the person that everybody has having a problem with, this being like, okay, give me specific examples and tell
Yeah.
me exactly what is going on. I need to know exactly what it is. And often it is one thing, maybe two things, but whatever it is completely blown out of proportion, and it's because they've enjoyed this feeling of drama and creating this issue that they just I really do think they like that feeling. So it really is okay. Then once you have these things specifically, I'm not going now go to this person and say these are because I didn't see it. This is what you saw. So if you can't address this on your own, then we'll get everyone together and we'll talk about it together. But it's not going to be a hey, it's gonna be the 6 of us on you. You know, it's
Yeah.
not gonna be 6 versus 1. Matter of fact, and I don't know if this is right or not, my employees get frustrated with me because I will always side with the person who is being picked on, if you will. So I will always back them up,
You
even
advocate.
even if I feel the same, even if I'm like, I've noticed the same thing, I will first be the advocate of the person who is being picked on,
Yeah.
and then just to be and that often will de-escalate a lot of things, and you know, I think that's because otherwise it's just this ripple effect that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where become this big issue monster, and what it does at the end of the day, it erodes trust within your team, and it replaces it with resentment, which we've talked about, and those things are dangerous because you spend so much time and effort building trust with team and team members that you can't afford to let a pebble in a shoe now erode that trust, and
Yeah.
it's an issue, right? Just take it out, address it, get it over with, do it right, and then move on. I think that's the best way to address this conflict.
Oh, Sith Lords speak in absolutes, isn't that right, Jared?
Seriously, like,
It's
and not only will they. Here's what one of our Sith Lords says all the time. Is she says, and I just did it. She's like, I say this all this is happening all the time. So and so is never doing this. Okay,
never, always,
they
everyone.
they didn't do it exactly. We all feel this way.
Yeah.
Really, I you know so yeah we have to somehow, and it's I think it's a skill over time is managing to read between the lines. Okay, what is the real message here? What's really going on? And that's a difficult thing to do, but yeah, be careful, beware of the Sith Lords in your practice because
Yeah.
they are really difficult to deal with.
So many patients are mad about this. This happened to so many patients. Okay, how many did it happen to? Well, so many. Okay, well, how many? Get the numbers. Let's see. I want to see. 3. It happened to 3. So we're talking about 3 patients that are upset about this billing change. So 3 out of 3,500 are upset. All right. So all of them are upset. All 3 of them.
We've
Yeah,
been
and
getting so many calls, so
so
many.
many calls. How many? Mango says we got 2. Yeah, so yeah, that's that's that principle of don't make long-term changes over short-term problems, right? Yeah, that's huge there. The other thing that I want to say really quick, and because we're going to talk about reviews here, employee reviews here in just a second, is don't be alone with a patient, or I mean with a well, the patient too, but don't be alone with an employee. Like when you go and do these reviews, and we talk about private, if you have to have a closed door conversation, like have someone close by or try to have a second party, you really should have another member of your leadership team in that meeting with you. Legally, you want to do that. Just I'm not making this stuff up. Talk to your lawyer if you don't believe me. There's a lot of things that can go sideways, and people are extremely vindictive and are not above making accusations and trying to see you as a golden parachute. So just watch out. There are predatory humans out there that don't give a flying flip about you and your family and will absolutely crush you if you're not careful with how you are setting up these meetings. And just again, don't be alone with the patient, don't be alone with another employee. Um, Okay, let's talk a little bit, Jared, about this review process. One that we utilize, and again, we've taken it right from we integrate it with our Bloom Growth software, and we think that it works really, really well. And it's going back to the beginning of our discussion. It falls on the core values. So what you have is you have a breakdown of each of the core values, and you can send this out if you use Bloomgraph software, which we do at EA for all of our members. You can go into this. It's got a section built just for it, and it actually emails the questions of how well do you think you're doing in these different, core value categories. And so it sends an email to the employee, and the employee self-evaluates. And so they go through and they have a chance to make notes if they want to. And then it talks about it gives them their roles and responsibilities, and it says, it asks, okay, do you get it? Do you want it? Do you have the capacity to do it? And so again, they self-evaluate across the board on what is expected of them. It's written out really easily. Again, this is why your core values are so important. And then it's kicked back to the leadership team. The leadership team has a chance to review it prior to them coming in for their review. And so what we'll do as a leadership team is go through and say, yes, we agree, or no, we don't agree with how they self-evaluate. And if it's an opportunity to praise them for the chances that maybe they're doing something great. And it's also a chance to say, oh, we don't agree with you on this, and this is why. And then give specific, like Jared just said, give specific examples as to why we don't agree with that self-evaluation. And sometimes it's not always like, sometimes they under-evaluate and we see it that they're doing much better than they think they're doing, right? And so that's an opportunity to shine some light on that. But we found that it's not always, I think too often reviews are seen as a negative thing, and we don't see them that way. We see them as a very positive thing, a chance to give kudos, and also a chance to address any, maybe outstanding issues or maybe some of the long-term smaller things that need to be addressed. So really, really beneficial tool. And also this is a chance to say maybe their firewall, awesome. And you're like, okay, well, how do I want to reward this behavior? Right. So what do we want to do as far as giving some rewards? And I think that, balancing consequences and celebration, this is important in any office. And going back to the psychology of this, there's actually a psychological, if you ask people what keeps them in a job or what they like what's something that will keep them loyal, praise is one of those things. And sometimes it needs to be public, sometimes it needs to be private, but what you get is you actually get a dopamine hit when you're praised, and it gives you a sense of belonging and it motivates you. So if someone does something that creates a beneficial outcome and you praise that person, they get the dopamine hit. They feel like they're contributing, which is huge because people want to feel important, and it motivates them to be innovative on the next thing because their innovation wasn't shot down. It was actually integrated and praised. So some cool stuff there.
Yeah, this gives you an opportunity to really give a shout out. Be like, hey, this is actually really love how good you are at this core value. And these are some specific examples that I've seen where you make everybody feel important, which is one of our core values. Everyone is important. And that way you're recognizing them as well. So, and then maybe there is something that you work on, but if you're starting out with those and you're giving praises and you're giving that dopamine hit, then when they hit a core value that maybe they're not stellar at, then it's like, okay, these are some things that you did great. Here's an area where what I would love to see you do. I would love to see you do this on
Phone
your
calls coming through, man. We're getting phone calls from Tanzania. So it happens in podcasts sometimes.
Yeah, so and it gives you a chance to say, okay, this core value. Here's what I'd like to see you. Here's a specific example of the way that I could see you do this in your position in this core value. I feel like that this is what it means. And so that's it's a the core reviews used to be. I used to not do them because I hated them because I didn't know how to do them, and I knew that what every employee expected at the end of the review was to get a raise of some sort, right? So,
Right.
and I knew what they would ask for review. That's what they wanted. They wanted a raise, and so now they know exactly what's going to happen in the review. They know exactly what we're going to go over, and they know that we're not going to talk about raises during the review. That's not what the review is for. Now we may offer it, we may give it, but that's not part of the agenda of the review. So oftentimes, people are asking for a reward because or a raise because you haven't given them any other sort of validation that what they're doing is great, right? So by reviewing the core values, you're saying you're very good at this, you're great at this. Here's where you need to work on this, and then it's not like, well, okay, I'm doing good, but I could do a little bit better. So I don't need to ask for it because before it's like, how am I doing? You're doing good. I appreciate all you're doing. It's great. Okay, can I get a raise? Sort of deal, um, rather than here's things you're doing awesome. I love this specific example. Here's some things I need you to work on, and we'll discuss this at the next review. I'd love to see you kill this. And then at that point in time, it almost you should pay your employees fairly and be them as most generous as you can, right? But that shouldn't be the expectation of the review is a raise every time.
Right. Yeah, definitely not. Yeah, I think that's where I think that's an antiquated model and something that employees they feel like the best. Who doesn't like to get paid more, right? I mean, of course we all want to get paid more. But if that's the only reward that you're offering, that's not good. Like we've seen it with the whole hygiene, conundrum that we've been facing since COVID. Like we watched in our little valley here, we watched these. So we had an office, a competing office offer. What was it, Jared? 1,500 or $2,000 signing bonus or something like that. Like,
Yeah, at least that.
yeah, it was, yeah, at least that. And so they couldn't get, and it lured away two of our hygienists, and they left. And they went. One went to one office that was offering a similar bonus. One went to the other one. They lasted, what was it, 6 to 8 months at those offices before they left.
Yeah.
So there is much more to having a reward system in place than just raises, right? There should be something that is, psychologically rewarding, mentally and emotionally rewarding, not just monetarily rewarding. And I think that's a good point. I want to introduce just a practical framework as we're starting to just close this up. And it's called the head, the heart, and the hands model. And what this means is like your head, clarify expectations, heart, lead with empathy and curiosity. So this is kind of a summary of what we talked about. And then hands and this is something that we haven't quite talked about yet, is provide tools and follow up. So we've talked a little bit about some of those tools, but to steal another thing from the military when I was in the Air Force was set them up for success. Right. And so if you're going to give somebody and say, okay, we have a plan of attack, we're going to go ahead and set the expectation that there's going to be change. What are the tools that we're offering that employee to accomplish those things? And are we setting them up for success, or are we setting them up for failure? Because if you're not careful, I mean, the innate behavior is not good. Otherwise they wouldn't be doing it, or, they're not going to do it if it's not innate. And so if it's not corrected, they're going to continue. And that's the natural course that they're going to want to continue to do. So if you don't provide them with tools to change, they're going to revert back to what they're already doing, and you're not going to see any change. So setting them up is really important for success. Okay, so that's the head, heart, and hands model. I don't know, Jared. I think maybe the mantra is solve it where it starts.
Yeah. Don't let it fester. Solve it where it starts. You know, and I would just say maybe if I had some thoughts on this is to just like take care of it before it becomes a festering wound that you have to deal with, right? Just pull the sliver out and address it, which is one thing that I struggled with for a long time. I just don't like to address those sort of things. I'm the type of personality that puts it off, but solve it where it starts. To have your make sure you set your reviews ahead of time. You set the expectations of we're having quarterly reviews or semi-annual reviews, whatever you decide to do. So everybody knows their reviews are coming. If you have a big team like we do, you do it once a week. And if you have quarterlies or you do it once a month or
One
twice a month.
one employee a week until it's done is what you're saying. Not every
Yeah,
week
yeah,
have them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're not spending days and like days straight doing reviews. Just do one a week until it's done. And then make sure you're recognizing their core values, right? Make sure you are praising and then use the tools that are afforded to you. So don't do this, don't you don't have to make this up. You don't have to sit down and create and organize this. There's tools that work really well, that work well with us in our practice, that work well with our EA clients, our team, our tribe members, right? Use your accountability chart, use your people analyzer. You're analyzing their strengths, weaknesses. Use the IDS, the identify, discuss, solve, use that issue list. Use your meetings, your level 10 meetings. A lot of the resentment that starts comes because there's a process or a system that is broken. And instead of addressing the broken system, we live with it. And when we live with it, people start then to assign accountability or responsibility to some other person, which then causes resentment, which isn't true at all. It may have nothing to do with that person, but people want resolution and they will create their own resolution. So if you're not using your accountability chart, if you're not using your weekly meetings to identify issues with systems, not with people, and identify issues with systems or processes that can be addressed quickly, can be assigned, then everyone can come to an agreement on who's responsible for it rather than letting it fester for weeks, months. Finally, somebody says, well, so and so isn't doing this. Well, that's not so and so's responsibility, but you as a leader let that digress to get to that point. So use your level 10 meetings, use your core values, use all of these tools put together in the right way, and this will solve all of these business related frustrations that you're dealing with these employees.
Yeah. It doesn't get rid of conflict, but it teaches you how to master it. Right. And that's the thing is like, you're never going to get rid of conflict ever. It's never going to happen. But the highest performing teams don't avoid conflict; they master it. And I think that's the key right there is to learn how to master conflict, how to make it something that is less intrusive and doesn't own your office. So yeah, for sure. Well, cool, man. This has been sweet. Any other thoughts before we sign off?
No, it was awesome. Great podcast. It's fun to talk about. It's fun to think about how far we've come with our practice as well. And that's why we have Elevation Association is we love to help you in your practice. And there's so many dentistry doesn't have to suck. Mike doesn't have to be frustrating. Like you can do the business side and the dentistry side and love both of those sides.
Yeah, for sure. Hop on school if you want to continue this conversation. Hop on school with this Elevation Association on school. And yeah, like if you've got some crap happening in the office, you want a little horsepower in your corner, hop on board. We've got an awesome tribe that's there to support and to have discussions like this, and talk about conflict and resolution and like how did you guys fix this? I got an employee doing this, what did you guys do? Jump on, let's have this discussion more. And that's in addition to all the other cool stuff we've got on there. So check out school and yeah, check out our website. Don't forget to look into everyone, we all need breaks, right? We all need some respite from the ins and outs of the grind. And so we've got our Dominica Life Summit coming up. Come with us, enjoy some Caribbean awesomeness and relax and with some awesome people and yeah, think about coming to our outfitter course. We're having another one in January. Those are fantastic. Learn a little bit about yourself, learn a little bit about your team, and learn how you can better organize and optimize your practice. So lots of cool opportunities to venture into. If you have any questions, please reach out and contact us. All
Yeah.
right.
That outfitter course is where we walk you through step by step on how to implement these tools that we talked about today. And we can spend 2 full days like helping you implement that into your practice. That's sometimes the hardest part. Maybe one of the biggest hurdles to doing that is, oh man, there's all these tools. How do I do it? But okay, you to come here, come 2 days Sun Valley, beautiful Sun Valley in January. You can go skiing if you want or whatever. And we can help you walk you through that and implement that. So we remove that hurdle from you.
Heck yeah. All right, man.
Thank,
Awesome.
see you
Okay. Thanks for
guys.
listening. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye bye.
Cheers.